University of Maryland Global Campus has more than 20 years' experience providing affordable online education to military service members and working adults. Offering low tuition, no-cost digital resources replacing most textbooks, scholarships for those who qualify, and more. Learn more at umgc.edu/podcast.
It takes a lot of ingredients to fix or build a car, like cooking, but without the frozen dinner easy way out. eBay Motors has 122 million parts. It's always the right fitment, so you can follow any recipe to a T. Whether it's a vintage Italian coupe that's classic like Grandma's meatballs or a German luxury car that's as complicated as Oma's rouladen, to cook up something great in the garage, use the eBay Motors app or visit ebaymotors.com. Let's ride.
Hey everyone, this is the Almost World Podcast. Bringing to you mind-blowing interviews with guests from all over the world. So settle down, relax, and enjoy the show. Oh yeah, by the way, if you like the podcast, please support Almost World Podcast on Patreon. Your support is what helps the podcast improve more and more. 3. Welcome to Almost World Podcast. This is Elmo and I'm with my friend Larry. Hey man, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Larry Rhodes, or Doubter 5. I have my own podcast. It's called Digital Freethought Radio Hour, which actually goes out on FM, but we record it for podcast as well. And Elmo, you were on the show last week.
Yes, I was. That was a fun experience.
Yep. And people can find that on YouTube or go to digitalfreethought.com and click on the blog button to find out all about that. I'm an atheist. I've been an atheist for about 50 years. I'm 70 years old now. I've been an atheist activist for about 20 years. I started the Atheist Society of Knoxville, which now has over 1,000 members. I was an executive producer for the TV show that we did locally for 10 years, but I was only the executive producer for the first 4. I've written a book. It's on Amazon. It's called Atheism, What's It All About? And that's about enough for an intro, I guess. I'll tell you a little bit about me.
Okay, awesome. Well, when it comes to atheism, how do you define atheism? There's so many people that have different concepts of it, but how do you use it? You've written a book about it, so maybe you could also dive into that as well.
Sure. Atheism is basically not having a belief in a God. It's a lack of a belief in a God. I don't believe in gods, but I'm an agnostic because I don't know of any gods, have no claimed knowledge of gods. And that's the difference between atheism and agnosticism. Gnosticism comes from the Greek word knowledge. And agnosticism or agnosticism is without knowledge of a certain thing. A Gnostic would claim knowledge of God. An agnostic would claim no knowledge of gods. An atheist would believe in gods. An atheist doesn't believe in gods. So I'm an agnostic atheist. I'm an agnostic because I don't have any knowledge of any gods, one way or the other. And I'm an atheist because I don't believe in any. Mm-hmm. And that pretty much lays it out.
Mm-hmm. But how would you then, I guess, encounter or interact with someone who would say, I'm an atheist because I don't think there is a God? It's sort of a positive claim sort of thing.
Oh, I think, then you have like a Gnostic atheist. They claim knowledge that there is no God. Now, they probably do that on specific gods. Like the God of Christianity is theoretically claimed to be all-knowing, all-powerful, all good, and you can't have that. It's kind of mutually exclusive because there is evil in the world. If he was all-powerful and all good, how could there be evil? Because he would get rid of evil or pain or suffering or all of that. So for the Christian God, they would say, I'm a Gnostic atheist. Now, I don't claim that, but some do, and I can't defend them.
I see. Yeah, I guess like for example, you could sort of claim knowledge about something. That, for example, you could claim knowledge that God isn't real if you could prove that the concept that they have of God, let's say the Christian God, is incoherent or sort of flawed and obviously contradictory, right?
Right. But also you could claim that there is a God if you had maybe a revelation. Let's say that let's say you took some drugs and you went into a trance and you felt like God was in your presence or vice versa, and he communicated with you. Well, you would come out of the trance or out of this state thinking that you had knowledge of God, and therefore you would go around telling people you had knowledge of God. So you would be a Gnostic theist. See?
Yeah, okay.
But a lot of we have ways of understanding how people could think that they received knowledge when it could just be hallucination, either auditory hallucination, visual hallucinations, or from different. They could be tricked by other people. Lots of different ways.
And I've talked to so many atheists on this show, and I guess maybe the audience is already familiar with the arguments of why they're an atheist.
Sure.
And but I want to dive into one thing specifically about what you mentioned, is that you're a atheist activist now, which is different from just being an atheist. So why the hell do you have to, I guess, like enforce this? I'm really curious, my friend. Why?
Well, because of the harm that religion does in the world today. They've done harm. Religion has done harm throughout the world for ages, for eons. And I wrote a blog post on it, and it's part of my book. It's called "What's So Wrong with Religion Anyway?" Should I go through some of the insights?
Please do.
From the? Okay, hold on. I'm bringing up the page now.
It's I guess you're someone who dives into this and actually made it your career, right?
Sure. Yeah. I don't get paid except for the royalties from the books, but heck, I've probably given away more books than I've sold, so it's not a real moneymaker for me.
So you're more of an atheist philanthropist, though.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about some of the harm. Religion is very divisive. It splits all of humanity into warring factions. Religious beliefs were the cause or the justification for the Spanish Inquisition. That was 350 years of torture, bloodshed, and property theft in the name of Jesus. The Crusades, 200 years of holy war. The divine right of kings. Every king that has ever had a crown placed on his head was placed by a bishop or some clergy, saying that God has given this man the ability to rule, or the right to rule over other men. You know what I mean? The clergy validates the sovereign's right to rule over other men. Maybe not every king everywhere, but generally European and that area. Witch trials are based. It says in the Bible that witches are not to be suffered to live. So witch trials in Europe and America, that's several hundred years of witch trials that have taken place. It says in the Bible that slavery is okay and that it's all right to own or buy slaves from your neighboring tribes. Dehumanization of other religions, believers. And also in the Bible, women are subjected to property status. They are really just property of men all through the Bible. Religion is historically responsible for the decades of violence between the Jews and the Muslims in the Middle East, decades of violence between the Catholics and Protestants. And even the 9/11 was a faith-based act, Muslims against us. Going on to something besides simply violence, the suppression of science can be laid at the feet of religion. They have suppressed science and killed practitioners who had the temerity to propose theories that went against the church. The original sin itself of man eating from the tree of knowledge was frowned upon in religion, saying that certain knowledge we shouldn't have. Religion teaches us that the earth was put here for our disposal. Religion teaches us that we are all born tainted with sin, impure and dirty, and we must spend our entire lives trying to make up for the sins of the first humans. Shall I go on? There's more and more.
Yeah, sure. Make it an exhaustive list.
Sure. Religion tends to kill our natural curiosity. It teaches us to be satisfied with ignorance and with not knowing. When religious leaders give us pat answers for all of our questions, our curiosity of trophies. We simply believe that we have the answers when we don't. Further, religion teaches us that, going back to an earlier point, that certain areas of nature are off limits, like stem cell search, the creation of the universe, evolution would be outlawed if religion had half a chance in America. Religion redirects hundreds of billions of dollars and man hours away from many potentially more productive pursuits. Think about all the time that you spend trying to work up apologetics for religion, the study of religion, all the time you spend praying, the time you spend discussing it with other people. All of that is lost hours, man hours and money, focused on religion when it could be more productively spent. Religious belief is directly responsible of bilking of billions of dollars from the old and infirm by televangelists and faith healers. Religion teaches us that morality is rigid and unchanging, set in stone, rather than subject to changing circumstances. Religion's supernatural foundation keeps millions, if not billions, of people in educational and cultural stagnation. If societies believe they have all the answers to life's questions in their holy books, why study anything else? Think of the holy men in the Middle Eastern countries and in India. People pray rather than seek legitimate medical attention for illnesses for themselves and their children. Christian Science prayer practitioners are actually paid by insurance companies to pray for the recovery of sick and infirm in their care, as opposed to actually giving them minimal medical treatment. Oh, it just goes on. I hate to just keep reading my entire article to you, but you get the gist, and the article is online. Go to digitalfreethought.com/blog and look up the article called What's So Wrong with Religion Anyway?
I actually agree with a lot of them, and but I guess when it comes to just man-made religion, then you can actually see that it's
man-made religion. You think there are other religions out there besides man-made religions?
Well, we could certainly discuss that. But I guess mostly all of these problems are centered on mankind, and whatever, even if you have the perfect religion, if you put it in humans' hands, it will probably do a lot of danger, and I guess I think that the real root source of the problem here is us human beings, right? That no matter
what else are we going to do? I mean, we're humans. We are not other things. You're saying the root problem is humanity. Well, we as humans should trust the things that we can verify. Revelation from a supernatural being is not verifiable or testable. And if somebody says they get revelations from a supernatural God or the God of the universe who knows what we should do, how are we ever going to test that? How do we know who's given us the revelation from the true God or a false God or no God? You're just making it up.
Well, I guess, yeah.
I mean, how can we test that? How do you test it? How do you know that your God is the right God?
Well, I guess that's there's a long discussion on that. But okay, let's say that, for example, if a specific religion does, I guess, tell someone to do unhealthy things or things that are self-destructive, then I would say those that religion would probably be a bad one, or I guess, like, for because if it is a true religion or something, if it is that true religion, I imagine it to be something that
Well, can't we take Christianity as an example of that? I mean, in the Bible, it tells us that we need to kill witches. In the Bible, it tells us we need to kill gays, homosexuals. It tells us that we can take slaves. Matter of fact, it says we can sell our daughters into slavery, and tells us how much we should actually charge for them. All of that is bad stuff. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I
Well,
guess,
if it's bad stuff in your religion, then isn't it a bad religion?
Teaches, though? Is that what Christianity teaches?
Well, no,
though?
that's what I'm saying. The Bible is a Rorschach test. You know what a Rorschach test is?
Yeah.
It's those ink blots. In other words, you get out of it what you look for. You can go in there and you can find good stuff. You can find the Beatitudes. You can find all the loving stuff that Jesus said. Or you can see where Jesus said that we need to, if you want to be his disciple, you have to hate your mother, your father, your sister, brother, and indeed your entire family to follow him. He said lots of things. He said we should give up all of our earthly goods. And that's just the New Testament. What about all the Old Testament? There's a lot of bad stuff in the Old Testament.
Well, I guess that then, if you are going to analyze the Bible, then I would say let's look at it for what it is. And we are, and there's so many people that
analyze the Bible?
We are, and we should. And I guess then that the way we analyze the Bible, I would say, is like look at it on how a historian would read it, on how, and that's why there are so much study on it. And if
let me say this about historians. Historians have a principle, like it's called like now as then as now, something like that. I can't remember the exact words, but what they say is any historian is not going to look at the Bible and say, see, like at the end of Matthew, it says that the graves during the resurrection, the graves were open and many people came out of their graves and went into the cities. Do you think a historian is going to look at that and say, oh, wow, people actually got out of their graves and went into the cities? Historians don't look at miracle claims as real claims. So you don't want to say that historians say that the Bible is true. They say that things in the Bible are true. They don't say that the miracle claims are true.
Okay, I'm not, I guess, like making a claim that all historians believe the Bible is true to every level. I would say that there are historians who are atheists or whatever, but what I'm saying is in terms of the method and how the Bible should be studied, and it's generally not the Bible as, not looking at the Bible as a truth, but in terms of how on what the text generally wants to portray, or the message it wants to speak, right? And in terms of that,
no, I disagree.
Why?
Because there's so many conflicting things in the Bible. The Old Testament of the Bible says that it's like it was written by a war god. It's all about obedience and conquering your neighbor and taking slaves and showing power. In the New Testament, he completely switches over to a loving God. It's not so much as obey. The New Testament says believe. Okay, there's like, if you could boil down both testaments into a single word, the old one would be obey and the new one would be believe. It's all about belief. But there is a lot of good thing in the Bible. I don't want to say that there's no loving messages in the Bible. But if you were creating a new religion like they did back when Christianity was created, remember, it used to be Judaism. But Jesus and his followers created a new version of Judaism, and has been labeled Christianity. But if you were creating a new religion, wouldn't you put all kinds of loving messages in it? to show that your Christian, your new religion is all about love, taking care of each other and all of that. What I'm saying is you don't need religion for that. We can do that without being commanded to do that. All we need is compassion and empathy and humanism. There's no reason to pile on miracles and an invisible, all-powerful being that could throw you into hell at the slightest provocation. You know that there was no hell before the New Testament. That Jesus brought, what the New Testament did, brought hell into existence.
But I guess that what you said about it, that it's the Old Testament is obey and the New Testament is believe. I wouldn't deny that, but I would say there's a reason for that, and that's why there are theological studies for it. And we can look at the themes that's both sects share, right? And
I think that it says more about the societies of the time. Back during the time of the Old Testament, it was all about power and kings and armies and all of that you had to obey. And they put that in their religion because that's the society that they lived in. Now, at the time of Jesus, all kinds of new religions were flourishing. The Roman gods, the Greek gods, all of these different religions were flourishing. And what the message to the society at the time for the new religion was, believe that our God is the one true God, the only God. Believe that Jesus is his messenger and his son. It's trying to get away from coercion and get into belief of the God, that particular God. Now, when you say the reason why the Old Testament's the way it is and the New Testament's the way it is, you say the reason is, well, God changed his mind, or God wanted us to do this then and he wanted us to do this now. I think it's more society wanting us to do that, or the messages of society itself was telling us to do that, and the religious people of the time wrote that down and imbued it into their books.
But I guess there is one great perspective in Christianity and how they look at the Bible, and it's that it's both fully man-made and also both fully divinely inspired.
How can it be 100% both?
Yeah,
I think it's fully man-made.
Yeah,
but you got to show that any supernatural being exists. Even a soul. Nobody has ever demonstrated the soul exists, much less a God or a heaven or a hell or any of that. Everything after the man-made part is pure claim without evidence.
Well, I guess we could talk about the metaphysical evidence and dive into some of the
What do you mean by
philosophical discussions.
What do you mean by metaphysical? Let's define it.
Metaphysical simply metaphysics, in terms of ultimate reality.
Well, you should really say physics if you mean physics. Metaphysical, calling physics metaphysical is muddying the water. Let's look up metaphysics. I have my own thoughts on what it means.
Metaphysics simply what ultimate reality is, but it's more of a discussion of reality. Yeah.
It says here that it's essentially a question of the nature of mind. What does it mean, something to be metaphysical? The nature, after the things of nature, referring to an idea or doctrine, posited reality outside of human sense perception. Now, how do we know that there's anything outside of human sense perception?
Yeah, and then we're gonna also then start with epistemology there, like how do we know?
Epistemology is simply how do we know things?
Yeah.
We know things because of our perceptions.
Yeah, and there's the philosophical discussion on these topics is
our philosophical discussions are based on their human senses. What we see, hear, touch, feel, our perceptions of the universe through our senses. what else can we use?
How do we define what senses are, right? Because if you're talking about simply empirical senses, then other than that, we have a lot of other senses that we can use to arrive at truth, right? Let's say, for example, like 1 + 1 = 2, right? You're not using any sense or visual or anything.
We're talking about logic and reason.
Yeah, and that's a way to know things as well. You could reach knowledge on something, reach the truth, not just by empirical sense, but by other forms of epistemology.
To be able to say 1 and 1 = 2, 1 stands for something. Let's say it's 1 apple. An apple is something that you can touch and feel.
One doesn't have to represent anything. It just has to represent one as a concept in of itself.
Okay, so you're saying we have our senses, and then we have philosophy and logic, and that is based on logic and reason.
Yes, and we know for a fact.
Well, how do we verify that any of the things that we come up with using logic and reason are real?
Well,
I mean, we go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, what if in this case, then we can observe that does the universe follow logic as well, right? Is there, for example, if I say that I have 2 eyes, but I have 3 eyes, that is a logical contradiction, right? And you know that it is false. So then we can observe that the universe follows from some sort of structure here, and at least we can follow that and make inferences. I
don't have any problem with that.
Yeah, and that's.
But what you're talking about is metaphysical stuff.
Yeah, we can dive into metaphysics through our language that we can verify through logic and these.
Well, how do we test it though?
Yeah, and what kind of test are you talking about though? If you're asking for an empirical test,
give me a metaphysical argument for the existence of God.
Let's say, I would say the most basic one is the Kalam cosmological argument. Are you familiar, bro?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Well, let's say that.
But go ahead and lay it out for our listeners.
Okay. I guess I'd have to Google it if I would want to be more specific about it. But,
well,
but based on my knowledge, it's basically everything that begins to exist has to have had a cause, right?
Okay. So that is not the original argument for that, right?
Yes, of course not. Yeah.
What was the original argument?
Well,
how was it first placed?
So I guess the first premise is everything that begins to exist has a cause.
No, it's not. No, that's what I'm saying. That is not the original argument. The original argument comes back from the Greeks, which said everything has a cause. But then the religious people get in there and they want a special exemption for their God because they claim that their God has always existed. So he is the one thing that doesn't need a cause. So now they've changed the whole question. They've changed the whole cosmological argument from being everything has a cause to everything that exists has a cause. And that cause is God. So they have dishonorably changed the cosmological argument to suit their own beliefs.
But okay, I guess in terms of the first premise, right, that if everything has a cause, then we just don't know if everything has a cause, right? But we can we can at least by definition, right? We could actually agree that everything that begins to exist has a cause.
See, that's you're changing it. If everything has to have a cause, then what's the cause for God? If everything doesn't have to have a cause, then why do we even say the universe has to have a cause?
Well, I guess that if this is sort of an if statement, right? Like if everything that begins to exist has a cause, then we can.
So that's in the form of a premise. I don't accept your premise.
Well, okay, then well, then we're discussing it here in terms of metaphysics, right? So in terms of the universe, right? If everything that begins to exist has a cause, then we can slowly lead to the conclusion here. And in terms of indicators, there are so many arguments.
We've covered this pretty well. I covered my point. You've covered your point. So I'll accept, for the sake of argument, I'm going to accept your point that if everything that exists has a cause, then everything that exists probably was caused by a God, which is where you're going, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If everything that exists nowadays was started by a God, how do we know it's your God? There are thousands, tens of thousands of gods that are worshipped in the world right now and through history. Why not Zeus? Why not one of the Roman gods or the Greek gods? Why not a deist god? A deist god, you know what a deist god is?
Yeah.
Okay. A deist god, for their listeners, is a god that started the universe, but it's not any of the gods that we know of. It's just some strange god that started the universe that may have died in the explosion. He may have just gone away, lost interest in his test, his experiment. He could have gotten bored, his mother might have called him to dinner, and he's been gone forever. He's an impersonal starter god. That's all he did. He just started the universe and left. Now, it could have been any of the 10,000 gods or the deist god. How do we know it's your God?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
I'm asking, this is a real question. I want to know. How do you get from that to this?
Well, if you're going to ask me why I'm a Christian, then I would say that I would look to the Bible, and in terms of the historical accuracy of
every other religion on the world has their own holy book, so that's not really an answer. All of the other holy books say it's their God.
If I'm going to claim that the historicity of Jesus' resurrection is historically
history doesn't address miracles.
Well, it depends on which. We are going to grant that possible miracles could exist, because we grant that we could have had a creator.
I don't grant that, because I don't accept. You remember, we were saying that it could be a creator. And if the creator created the universe, that may have been the very last thing he did before he died. We don't know. We need good logical foundations for our beliefs, and you're just accepting the claims of long dead preachers who put them in a book and said, this is how it happened, when they had no more idea than Pat Robertson knows. Or any holy man in the Far East.
Yeah, then I'd say, look, there are so much. There's the side in terms of the historical accurate reliability of Christ's resurrection is so strong. And
no, have you ever heard of David Hume?
Yeah,
David Hume is an old philosopher. He lived 250 years ago, and he said that there's no such thing as miracles. And the reason he said that is that we know that people lie and they misrepresent the truth, and that there are people who think that things happened, but they were mistaken or they were fooled. All of those things can lead to a person thinking that they saw a miracle or experienced a miracle. However, to actually have had a miracle, it had to have been something that would defy the laws of physics, the laws of our universe. Since to accept a miracle claim, you would have to give more credence to a story that somebody said that the laws of physics were broken, knowing that people lie, that people misrepresent the truth, that they're fooled, or they just are mistaken. Then we would actually have to believe that over the fact that we know that laws of physics don't break.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't put it very well, but I can look up his actual words and read them to you, if you'll give me a second.
Yeah, okay. Maybe I guess that if you are going to presume that the laws of universe will not break at any instance, then we really can't prove it though, because David Hume himself is very also made his skeptical claims on causality itself. That in terms of the fundamental basics of how we know things to continue to be caused by one another, there is at some point it's simply that it's all simply correlation, and that's why in terms of the law of causality, it's just a presupposition.
Law
like
of causality, again, the laws of causality does not allow for miracle claims. The laws of causality is something, if we see something that was caused, we can look for a natural cause for it. To accept a miracle claim, you'd have to believe that it's more likely that the laws of nature were actually broken than that the person describing the miracle was mistaken, deceived, or lying. That's what he said.
Okay, so
I mean, and we don't look at the Bible. I mean, here historians and anybody who's secular would look at anybody from another religion actually would look at your miracle claims in your Bible and say, I don't believe that. But they'd look at the miracles on their own holy book and say, sure, Muhammad split the sun in two and rode a horse into heaven. Would you believe that?
Well,
That's
I would have to
miracles in
look
their
at
holy
the whole belief system itself and analyze it.
No, I mean, it's a simple claim. It's a simple claim. And your Bible is filled with simple supernatural claims. And to look at the whole belief system and get it, quote, in context doesn't make them any more fantastic.
Well, I guess then, for example, like if you were to ask me, like, was Christ resurrected, right? And how can I prove it, and I'd say look at the text, and
look at the text again. You're saying a story proves a miracle when we know that people write stories all the time. I mean, would you believe that Harry Potter's all good? And all the magic and Camelot or King Arthur's and Merlin and all the magic there was real because it's in a story?
Well, okay, then let's compare Camelot to, let's say, Socrates, right? There are stories of Socrates. Does it mean that it doesn't exist, right? And
I'm not talking about an existence of an actual person, or we know people exist.
We don't know
if
someone actually exists, right? We don't know.
Well, we know people exist. We know that people exist. Do they not?
Yeah, but I don't know if Socrates himself exists.
And then we'll talk about God's existing. If you can show me a God, we'll worry about the history.
Why did you just change the subject though?
Because
right?
that's what you're doing. You're saying that we don't know that Socrates exists because we don't have actual proof of his existence. But you're not hearing me when I say no. We don't have actual proof of his existence, but we do know that people exist. We know people have been existing for thousands of years. Do we not?
Okay, but
now show me. You're trying to use that to show me that Jesus existed. Okay, fine. Jesus existed. Was he magic? That's my point. Did he do miracles? How do we test it? And are you going to believe things without proof, without evidence, and without being able to test any of the beliefs that you're buying into?
Well, okay.
And we're getting close. We're getting it toward the end. We got like 5 minutes left.
Yeah, no worries, man.
Before I gotta go.
Okay, I just want to say that what I meant by mentioning Socrates was that there is a method on how historians verify if someone actually did do all the things recorded there, right? And
I don't have a problem. Yeah, I agree. There is a method. That method does not hold true for Jesus because we don't have any of his original writing. We don't have any writings from his period of time that he lived. We have people telling us about him long after he died, which could be just legend. He's a lunatic, liar, lord, or legend. Merlin was a legend. Did he actually exist? We don't know. I don't have a problem saying Jesus existed. He was a traveling rabbi who tried to change the rules handed down by Judaism and taught a more loving version of it. Fine. But the miracle claims, I think those are just embellishments to try to get the religion off the ground.
Mm-hmm. Okay, then I guess I would also say, I guess, in defense on both sides, that if you really want to, I guess I would be pro skepticism too, right? Like, if you really want to know if Jesus was resurrected, I'd say analyze the text, look at what the experts say, and how they approach it, and look at it yourself and arrive at the conclusion.
Well, let me look at. No, what makes you think I haven't? I was raised Christian. I was raised in a Christian.
I'm not referring to you, bro. I'm referring to the audience that's listening. But yeah, and
let me just say this about that then.
Mm-hmm.
If you reading a holy book, reading the stories in it is enough to convince you that miracles actually happened, and that you've got a soul and it's going to live forever and go to particular places after you died, simply by reading a story in a book, then if that's good enough for you, fine, go for it. It's not good enough for me. Because there are thousands of holy books out there that make contradictory claims to that book, and they all have no evidence to prove that any of the supernatural stuff is real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if it's just the book that you're looking at, I would also say, it wouldn't be good enough for me too. And Larry, thank you so much for coming on the show, bro. It's a fun conversation, man. And it is. And everyone, if you're still listening and you want to check out more of Larry's stuff, go check out his podcast.
Yeah, digitalfreethought.com is the blog. And if you go on YouTube, we have Digital Freethought Radio Hour, and also Let's Chat. It's both available there.
Okay.
Elmo, thank you so much for allowing me to come on your show and asking me to. And you're welcome back on our show anytime.
So that's the end of it. Thanks for tuning in, guys. This is your host, Elmo Ador Jr. And thank you for listening in. And please subscribe. Please follow us on Facebook. Please follow this. Please. Thanks.
University of Maryland Global Campus has more than 20 years' experience providing affordable online education to military service members and working adults. Offering low tuition, no-cost digital resources replacing most textbooks, scholarships for those who qualify, and more. Learn more at umgc.edu/podcast.
Holidays are here, and so is fashionable fitness. Gift yourself a Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 3 5G, a phone that folds in half to literally stand on its own. Pair it with the Galaxy Watch 4 for ultimate wellness and wow factor. Check health stats, flex personal records. Over 90 activities can be tracked, like biking, swimming, golfing, and more. Invest in yourself with tech made to crush goals. Holidays open up with Galaxy. Shop it all at Samsung.com. 5G connection and availability may vary. Check with carrier. Products sold separately.